Hello my friends, and welcome back to another Baldur's Gate 3 character building guide. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're covering the ultimate support character, a character that rolls all of the strengths of Warlock and Cleric into a single class, providing incredible healing, incredible support to your party, awesome sustained damage and powerful utility spells, as well as a Fortress of Darkness in which your party is nearly invincible, providing you a fortress of healing and solitude from which you can rain death down on your enemies. We are using a modded subclass for this. The subclass in question is the Celestial Warlock, which is a subclass from Tabletop Dungeons & Dragons, so is balanced to work in Baldur's Gate 3 because it uses the same base rule set as every other class in Baldur's Gate. The Celestial Warlock is a supporting and healing focused warlock and provides incredible strengths to your party, so it makes an excellent addition to your Honor Mode playthrough. Before I begin, I do want to take a quick moment to say thank you so much to Azel Crescent for the 1,000 bot donation, and Zebra for the $2, as well as Demir Kupich and Unit 00 and YV for becoming channel members. Thank you so much, my friends. I really appreciate the support. It really means a lot. Alright, let's get to the build. Since this is a modded run, I'm of course going to show you what mod we're using, so we're going to go ahead and search for Celestial Warlock here, and check off available on Mac and console so that everyone can use this guide. And then there's actually two different Celestial Warlock mods available. The one that we're using for this build is the Celestial Warlock subclass 5e rules. I like this one because it is very close to the tabletop rule set. The author has done a great job of translating the mod into Baldur's Gate 3 while still keeping the spirit of the mod intact and also adding some cool new options. It has one dependency, but if you hit download, it's just going to install both of them, and then you're ready to go. I'm using Will here as the example character, because of course this is a Warlock build, although since it doesn't fit with what we know of his pact canonically, obviously he's not a Celestial Warlock in story-wise, so if you feel like you can't make him a Celestial Warlock, then that's fair enough. This build is also excellent for a custom character, and if you're building this for a custom character, then for your race, human actually makes a pretty good pick for a reason I will get into shortly, as well as Githyanki, because the additional skill selection is very useful. The normal standouts for Warlock builds also apply. Drow or Half-Drow for additional casts of darkness every day are incredibly powerful, as are the races that just provide excellent bonuses, like Gnome for advantage on mental saving throws, Halfling to reroll 1s, Wood Elf or Half-Wood Elf for additional movement speed, or Dwergar for invisibility when not in combat. Any of those make an excellent pick, although of course any of the other races as well, but those are the strongest from a mechanical standpoint. Now, although this is a Celestial Warlock build, we're actually not going to start in Warlock. Instead, for our first level, we're going to take a level of Cleric. This character wants medium armor access, because one of the options that we have is to be a Radiating Orb build, and so the Luminous armor is incredibly powerful for that. And starting as Light Domain Cleric gives us one of the best defensive abilities in the game. Warlocks often struggle to use their reactions effectively, and so Light Domain Cleric gives us Warding Flare, which can keep us alive, which makes us even better at keeping our allies alive because it's so much less likely for our character to die. This just gives you a tremendous additional layer of safety for this character, which is very important for a support character. Support characters have to stay alive so that they can contribute to the battle. You might wonder why we're not taking Life Domain Cleric, even though this is a healing-focused build. The reason is that Life Domain's Disciple of Life ability only works on healing spells, so it doesn't function with the main way that this character is going to be healing. You can certainly take Life Domain Cleric, it's not a bad option at all, but I prefer Light Domain Cleric for our Cleric dip. For our cantrip selection here, we are going to go ahead and pick up Resistance and Guidance, because that will give us additional value, as well as Thaumaturgy, because this character will be our party face, so if we have advantage on Intimidation and Performance, we can make those Charisma checks in a more active and powerful way. Thaumaturgy is just always incredible for any party face character, so the one-level Cleric dip gives them a ton of additional value, and Guidance helps you as well if you aren't using Thaumaturgy in that particular dialogue. For our ability score selection, this character benefits very strongly from use of Ethel's Hair to go from 17 Charisma up to 18 Charisma. because we took the 1 level dip, so we're not going to have a 3rd feat. Basically, if you use Ethel's hair on this character, you get to take alert. If you don't, then you have to wear initiative gear. So I recommend that you use the hair on this character if you're using it in this playthrough. If not, it's not certain. It's still totally doable. You can just take a more standard attribute split, but the one that I'm going to recommend here is going to be 16 dexterity and 14 constitution, as well as 17 charisma. We want higher dexterity for this character because we are going to be in light or medium armor or robes a lot of the time. And so we want that armor class, and the initiative is very important. This character doesn't get inherent bonuses to its initiative other than we will be taking alert later on. So getting to +8 with 16 dexterity makes us extremely well set up for initiative in honor mode. I also recommend taking a background that gives you charisma skills, either whether getting them from your background or from your race. If you're a human, of course, you get to pick a skill, so you can make that persuasion. If you're a Githyanki, you can set your astral knowledge to the charisma skills and have proficiency in all of them, so Githyanki makes an excellent pick for this character. The main thing here is that we get a charisma skill, and then, of course, as a cleric, you get access to insight, something that a lot of party faces don't get access to, so it's kind of nice to start as a cleric because it gives you insight, and you can then take religion or history to have that to roll in dialogue as well, so you have all of the most important dialogue skills. I would recommend insight, religion, and persuasion if you're doing this setup as a human. You could, of course, take guild artisan or another background for persuasion, but there's a lot of ways to get these skills, and since this character is a charisma character and is likely your party face, we're so well set up for that, I highly recommend doing that. Alright, that's all our decisions at level 1. Let's move on to level 2. At character level 2, we are going to, of course, take our level of Warlock here, because we want to become a Celestial Warlock as soon as possible. The reason we took Cleric at level 1 and Warlock at level 2, by the way, is because of how Baldur's Gate calculates spell save DCs for illithid powers and items that and spells that you cast from scrolls or items. They use the casting stat of the last class that you took level 1 in, so we need to take Warlock as our second class in order to make sure that any scrolls and stuff we use our charisma. For our cantrip selection here, so unusually, we're going to take Celestial Warlock. So very unusually for a Warlock, we actually don't need to take Eldritch Blast. The Celestial Warlock is centered around use of Sacred Flame. You kind of spread Sacred Flame by dealing damage to the enemy, and then you can, as a bonus action, reactivate it to add additional damage over time to the enemy and spread fire damage to nearby enemies. So Sacred Flame ends up being our version of Eldritch Blast. So for our cantrip selection, we actually don't take Eldritch Blast, and instead take Friends, which of course will make us even better at being a party face, and Minor Illusion to pull characters together. That will make them grouped up for our AoE spells, as well as we can pull them away from their allies to ambush them one by one. We can also spread the Sacred Flame bonuses to multiple enemies when they're closely spaced together, thanks to Minor Illusion. For our subclass features here, we gain 2 cantrips. We gain Light and we gain Sacred Flame, which of course are excellent cantrips to have access to. Now, this is a little bit redundant with the Light Cleric that already gets Light as a cantrip, but having the utility cantrip is nice, and Sacred Flame is going to be our main damage source. And we also get the Healing Light ability. This is what makes the Celestial Warlock such a powerful supporting character. You can, as a bonus action, spend a Celestial Energy Point, which you get 1 of per Warlock level, to heal an ally for a d6 of healing. So basically we get Healing Word 12 times per day, or up to 11 times per day with this build. But also, we can spend multiple points at once with a single action. So if an ally needs more than a d6 of healing, you can give them up to 4 d6 of healing with a bonus action. That's just an incredible amount of healing that you're passing out. And it is, because it's a bonus action, it just lets you sustain your party while still dishing out incredible damage. For our spell selection at this level, we are going to take Armor of Agathis, and we're going to take Guiding Bolt. This gives us a good level 1 combat spell, and Armor of Agathis can help keep us alive. We don't take Hex, because Hex doesn't work with Sacred Flame, so we don't want to use that, since our main damaging source is going to be the Sacred Flame here. The mod author has included a little paragraph about how they've set up the mod here, so we just have to click through that, and then we are ready to move on to level 3. At character level 3, we are taking our second level of Warlock, getting ourselves another spell. The spell that we're going to take here is going to be Hellish Rebuke, just giving us a little bit more damage as a reaction at very, very low levels. We're going to swap this out pretty much as soon as we hit level 3 Warlock. So what we take here mostly doesn't matter, but this is the most likely to be useful at this level. And then for our Eldritch Invocations, we're going to take the 2 house-ruled Eldritch Invocations that the mod author has added for this character, Bearer of the True Flame and Sacred Living Flame. So Bearer of the True Flame gives enemies, when we hit an enemy with our Sacred Flame cantrip, they basically catch on Celestial Fire, taking the Sacred Flame cantrip again each turn for 2 more turns. We can also spend a bonus action to add the duration, to refresh the duration of the Sacred Flame and spread it to nearby enemies. So we now have excellent defensive and offensive bonus actions. Either we can spread our Sacred Flame around to multiple enemies, or we can heal our allies with a bonus action. This is solid damage. It's still a little bit less damage than just Eldritch Blast and Agonizing Blast, but it can be spread in an AoE, and it's pretty cool that it works this way for the character. It also lets you do something a little bit different with Warlock, rather than taking exactly the same invocations every single time. In addition to that, we're going to take Sacred Living Flame, which gives enemies disadvantage on the saving throws against Sacred Flame, so that it lands more often. Obviously, we've all seen the memes about Shadowheart missing her Sacred Flames every single time because enemies make the saving throws, and this resolves that issue. At character level 4, we get to take our 3rd level of Warlock, getting access to 2nd level spells, and also an incredibly cool Pact boon that the mod author has added for the Celestial Warlock. So, let's take a look at this. The Pact of the Chain Celestial gives us a young Hollyphant as our familiar. Now, Pact of the Chain in tabletop allows the player and the dungeon master a bunch of leeway when it comes to choosing what your familiar is going to be. It's based on the alignment and sort of overall character of the character. So it's not quite as limited as just the imp or quasit that you get in Baldur's Gate 3. So I think that this fits very well with the flavor and intention of the design, that you can have a more celestially aligned creature as your familiar. The young Hollyphant gives you a bunch of abilities. I'll go over those once we're done leveling up the character. But most importantly, lets you blind enemies in an AoE and bless your allies, as well as fly around the battlefield. So it has a bunch of cool battlefield utility and provides even more support. And remember, since we're a Warlock, when it's not doing something, the Hollyphant can hide in the Cloud of Darkness with us if we have that set up, making it a lot more resilient than a lot of other familiars, because it has an easy place to stay hidden, so it won't just get obliterated by a stray shot from an enemy a lot of the time. For our spell selection at this level, we are going to take Cloud of Daggers, so that we have a good damaging concentration spell, and we're going to go ahead and replace Hellish Rebuke, which we don't particularly need at this level, with Darkness, so that we have that set up for later on. Now, it must be said that this character does not yet have magical dark vision, so we can't use our Clouds of Darkness the way another Warlock can to camp inside of them, because we didn't take Devil's Sight as an invocation. You could also swap up the invocation order to not get the Sacred Flame stuff early, but because that's what's one of the things that's kind of unique to this mod, I wanted to showcase it on the early levels. This is still a super powerful effect, but you do have to be a little bit more careful with it than you do with other Warlocks, at least until we hit Warlock level 5, and get Devil's Sight to be able to camp inside of it with perfect impunity. Character level 5, we get access to our first feat, and the feat that we are going to take is, of course, Alert, if we have Ethel's Hair. If not, then we're just going to use an ability improvement to raise our Charisma up to 18 so that we can get to 20 Charisma by the end of the game. I do recommend that you use Ethel's Hair for this character, though, so we're going to pick up Alert. The initiative bonus is incredibly valuable for us and will help ensure that we are able to go first to set up our Sacred Flame damage and get that going, which, of course, will let us apply debuffs to the enemies as well. and also to set up Clouds of Darkness to prevent retaliation and buff our allies appropriately. Going first is incredibly valuable for this character. For our cantrip selection here, we are going to go ahead and pick up Bone Chill. This is a very useful cantrip in Act 2 because it can give undead disadvantage and prevent healing to enemies, so Bone Chill is just a very useful utility spell. And then for our spell selection at this level, you have a few options. We can take Flaming Sphere to deal additional fire damage. This is another good combat concentration spell, and this character does want to be doing fire damage. You could take Misty Step as an escape option. You could take Hold Person. I'm going to recommend that you take Misty Step. Just every character should have access to this spell, so grabbing it early makes a lot of sense for this one, just to make sure that we can get out of bad situations if those come up. At character level 6, we're taking our 5th level of Warlock, and of course this is improving our Hollyphant abilities. I'll again go over exactly what they do as we continue to level up. With our spell selection at this level, we now get access to 3rd level spells, and so we are going to pick up Hunger of Hadar, just the best combat spell for a Warlock in general, and one that I would never leave home without on a Warlock. This just wins so many encounters on its own, and then we are going to replace Guiding Bolt, which we no longer need. You don't need a direct damage spell at this level. Our Sacred Flame has improved to the point where it's better than Guiding Bolt almost always anyways, so we're going to go ahead and swap out Guiding Bolt to pick up Counterspell, giving us the best reaction in the game and letting us shut down enemy spellcasters while spending our reaction. So now this character has incredible options for their reaction with Counterspell and Warding Flare, incredible options for their bonus action with Celestial Healing, as well as the spreading Sacred Flame, and of course great options for their action because you are a Warlock, so you have incredible Warlock spellcasting, as well as just casting more Sacred Flames. So this character will always have incredible uses for all of its resources every single turn of combat. Pretty much no matter what. Is one of the things that makes it such a flexible and powerful character. For our Eldritch Invocation here, we are of course going to pick up Devil's Sight. This just gives us way more utility with our darkness. Now notice that with Sacred Flame as our main combat spell, it doesn't matter as much if we're blinded in the darkness, because we won't have disadvantage on our attacks, but now you won't be able to draw a line of sight to enemies outside the darkness cloud, but if an enemy follows you in, they'll have disadvantage and you'll just be Sacred Flaming them in melee range, so you won't need Devil's Sight as badly, but this is still just such a powerful combo that there's no reason to pass up on it. At character level 7, we're going to take our 6th level of Celestial Warlock, getting yet another awesome class feature. We become resistant to radiant damage, which is useful in some encounters in the game, and whenever we cast a spell that deals radiant or fire damage, we add our charisma modifier to the damage, so that's a +4. That's a huge amount of bonus damage for our Sacred Flame, which is our main combat ability, because that does radiant and fire damage, so it's going to be, basically we get Agonizing Blast for Sacred Flame from the Radiant Soul, and also great with any other radiant or fire damage spells that we might happen to pick up. Now, we don't have a lot of those available as a Warlock. They actually don't get that many direct damage spells. So for our spell selection here, we're going to go ahead and pick up another control spell in the form of Hypnotic Pattern to be able to lock down enemies. That in situations where Hunger of Hadar isn't good. You could also go back for Hellish Rebuke. It does work with your other spells, but typically I'd rather just use Warding Flare as my reaction than Hellish Rebuke here. Flaming Sphere doesn't work with the Radiant Soul ability because it's the sphere doing the damage rather than us doing the damage. I think that this is actually not how it should work because they've made the sphere a full-on summon in Baldur's Gate 3. In tabletop, this would get the additional the Flaming Sphere would get the additional damage, but in Baldur's Gate, it doesn't work with that ability. So Flaming Sphere, not particularly useful for this character, even despite that ability, but Hypnotic Pattern is a great lockdown spell, so that's what we're going to pick up. At character level 8, we get our 7th level of Warlock, which of course gives us access to 4th level spells. So now we can take a spell that does fire damage in the form of Wall of Fire. This will add our charisma modifier to the damage. This will also spread our Sacred Flame. So we do tons of damage over time with this character, as well as providing incredible support and healing to our party members. We're also going to replace one of our earlier spells. We now have just too many concentration spells, and with Wall of Fire and Hunger of Hadar, we definitely no longer need Cloud of Daggers at all, so we're going to swap that one out. And we're going to go ahead and pick up Guardian of Faith, unique to this character, and a very powerful spell for controlling the area. You can use it to block doorways because it is big. It has secret passive large. The Guardian of Faith is a great damaging spell as well. 60 damage for a level 4 spell slot is a great ratio. And if we heal it in various ways, using aid from a party member or something like that, you can heal the Guardian of Faith to get it to attack an additional time. That's even more damage, but mostly this is just an incredible spell for controlling the battlefield and making sure enemies stand where you want them, such as, for example, in our Walls of Fire. For our Eldritch Invocation here, we're going to go ahead and pick up Dreadful Word, giving us yet another awesome control spell option. With these concentration control spells, it's great to have a lot of them so you can use the perfect one in the situation. It's better to cast a spell that's a 10 out of 10 in that situation, and a 2 out of 10 in other situations, but you don't cast it then, than to always have a bunch of spells that are 7 out of 10. So Warlock benefits very well from having a lot of options for its control spells. And Confusion is great if your allies and enemies are all mixed up in melee range, because it doesn't hit allies. At character level 9, we're going to take our 8th level of Warlock, getting access to a feat. The feat that we're going to take is, of course, an ability improvement to boost our charisma up to 20, either like this if we're using Ethel's Hair, or just naturally up to 20 if we aren't, and in which case we just would have taken an earlier ASI rather than taking Alert. Either way, getting 20 charisma is so important for this build, because we need high save DCs, so enemies can't pass our saves against Sacred Flame, and we want high charisma to deal additional damage based on that as well. For our spell selection at this level, honestly, at this point you can take kind of anything. We're down to the point where we are taking spells that are sort of the 3rd, 4th, 5th best things that we are doing in a turn, so you want kind of a situational spell. At this point you should have a good sense of what your party needs, so something like Banishment for certain encounters, Hold Person to lock down enemies, or a utility spell like Invisibility. All of those make great options, but by this point in the game you should have a good sense of what your party happens to need, and be able to pick a spell appropriately. At character level 10, we're taking our 9th level of Warlock, getting access to 5th level Warlock spell slots, and a spell that ups our damage dramatically in the form of Flame Strike. The additional fire, the huge amount of burst damage that you get from Flame Strike is great for this build. Of course, it is also going to add our charisma to the damage, which is a marginal improvement, but pretty nice when you're applying it in an AoE to a bunch of enemies. And this just gives us a tremendous amount of burst damage to wipe out large groups of enemies, something that this character is excellent at while providing support to our party. For our Eldritch Invocation here, we're going to take Minions of Chaos to get Conjure Elemental, because the day-long buff from Conjure Elemental is incredible. The 5th level spell slot that we spend on that is very much worth improving our party's power level over the course of the entire day. So at this point, we've gotten a lot of what we want out of Warlock, so we could definitely multi-class into something else at this level, and just take 2 levels in another class. If you are interested in doing that, my suggestions would be 2 levels of Fighter. You would want to respec to place the Fighter levels at the beginnings, because for the same reason we took Cleric at level 1, to make sure that the Charisma class was the last one we took. But 2 levels of Fighter gets you Action Surge, of course, which is incredibly useful, and if you're making melee attacks with this character, which is an option, I'll talk about it when we get to gear, then the fighting styles and stuff can help as well. 2 levels of Sorcerer is probably my preferred multi-class for this build. If you're doing that, it can get you Constitution save proficiency if you respec to take it at level 1, get you the Shield spell as an alternate reaction, and, of course, get you Flight from Storm Sorcerer, as well as the ability to twin spells, which is incredibly useful when you're doing Sacred Flame stuff. So all of those are very, very powerful. Sorcerer and Warlock, of course, always make an excellent multi-class, because you can use your Warlock spell slots to power your sorcery points. So those are the my suggestions for multi-class options. That being said, I'm going to just take the last 2 levels in Warlock and show you what those will look like as we go to level 11 here. At this level, we get yet another Celestial Warlock feature in the form of Celestial Resilience, which gives us a bunch of temp HP as well as our allies a bunch of temp HP. So up to 5 allies can have 10 temporary hit points. We get a little more than 10. Our Charisma plus our Warlock level, which is going to be like about 15 temp HP. This is not a tremendously powerful ability, to be honest. It's a nice little bonus that can help keep our allies alive in some circumstances if they're going to get burst down, but Celestial Resilience is more a nice to have than something that we're actually excited by. In addition to that, we get, of course, more 5th level spells, so you can pick up Hold Monster, for example, to lock down enemies, as well as cantrip selections. It does look like the mod author has made one small mistake here and is giving us cantrip selections twice over. We should only be getting one cantrip at this level, so something to fix in a future version of the mod, potentially. But this lets us both take, let's say, Blade Ward to stay alive in melee, and of course, True Strike, so that we can annoy people in the YouTube comments. That's it for level 11, so let's go to level 12. And at character level 12, we get to take our 11th level of Warlock, getting our 3rd Warlock spell slot, so now we can cast 3 powerful spells like Flame Strike per short rest, so that's going to let us win encounters very, very easily, as well as a Mystic Arcanum. There's 2 real options for the Mystic Arcanums here. You can either take Create Undead for yet another powerful summon that can follow you around all day, or you can take Eye Bite as an incredibly strong debuff that just kind of wins you 1 encounter per day. I personally prefer Eye Bite on Warlocks these days. I've recommended Create Undead in the past. The Mummy summon is very good, and with a Goo Warlock is better, because you'll be frightening enemies. But for the Celestial Warlock, the ability to just win an encounter by going into Eye Bite mode and just locking down every enemy while also outputting awesome healing and damage with your bonus actions is so powerful that I like taking Eye Bite here. And then for our spell selection, again, you're just going back and filling holes from earlier levels at this point, and you can replace any of the spells that you're not using with something that you think you will use more. Alright, that is the Celestial Warlock. Of course, we can improve this character even further with items and gear, so let's talk about those. For items for this character, there's really a few item sets that are incredible for this character overall, and which one you use is going to be the decision that you have to make when you're gearing it out. The first of these is, of course, the Radiating Orb item set. Since we're doing so much radiant damage, we can use the Luminous Gloves and the Luminous Armor, since we have medium armor proficiency, in order to just pass out tons of radiating orbs, as well as the Coruscation Ring. Remember, of course, that we are dealing spell damage because we have Sacred Flame. And the Callous Glow Ring, which will deal additional radiant damage to all of our targets. Now, the Callous Glow Ring does conflict a little bit with Darkness and Hunger of Hadar, so you do have to be careful there. But other than that, you can use this item set for incredible output of radiating orbs, locking down enemies, keeping your allies alive very easily, because enemies will not be able to hit their attacks at all. Radiating Orb reduces enemy attack rolls by up to -10, meaning they'll miss every single attack, especially if made against this character with our Warding Flare disadvantage, so enemies will just never be able to hit you. Of course, we are also doing a lot of healing, so the Hellrider's Pride and the Whispering Promise can be an excellent source of additional buffs, and until you get the Radiating Orb set online, you're definitely going to use these, and you might just use these all the way until the end game, upgrading the Hellrider's Pride, of course, to the Reviving Hands later on, but the additional Bless and additional Blade Ward damage reduction that you get from the Hellrider's Pride, again, give you an incredible amount of value for your party. Finally, Reverberation is another debuff that we can apply with our Sacred Flames to incredible value. We're dealing radiant damage, so the Gloves of Belligerent Skies work every time, and we're inflicting conditions with every cast of Sacred Flame because of the Sacred Burning effect that the Celestial Warlock house rule adds, so we can do a bunch of reverb as well if we want to. All of these together make an incredibly powerful combination. You can mix and match these items to your taste. My personal preference is going to be for the buff on heal items, the Boots of Stormy Clamor, and then you use the the Coruscation Ring and the Luminous Armor to inflict more radiating orbs, but the Callous Glow Ring could be added instead of the Whispering Promise if you have Bless from another source. And you will have Bless from another source from your Hollyphant, so you can do that as well. There's a lot of different optionality for this, so but any of these 3 item sets will be incredibly powerful. The other thing that you want to do is increase your spell save DC, so increases like with the Fistbreaker Helm to increase your save DC are incredibly valuable for this character. Ketheric's Shield, we have Shield Proficiency, is the best in slot shield for us because it's going to increase our save DC as well as give us additional armor class, which of course we want. And the Infernal Rapier is my favorite weapon. Now this does have the same, this is the same save DC bonus as the Fistbreaker Helm. So the Infernal Rapier and the Fistbreaker Helm don't stack to increase your save DC, but the Infernal Rapier is just great for this character with the Day-Long Summon and the increase to save DC, as well as the ability to attack in melee if you want. Not something you'll be doing all the time, but very useful. Of course, this is a casting build, so Marka Heshkir is the actual best-in-slot weapon, but another character can use that. This character has so many things going on that we don't really need Marka Heshkir. And then finally, any increases to our armor class are very good. Things like the Cloak of Protection go very well on this character, just to make it a little bit more resilient to enemy attacks. The Potent Robe is also very much worth mentioning. It will add our charisma to damage with our Sacred Flame, which we are, of course, casting and recasting over and over again in combat. It is not as good as it is for Eldritch Blast Warlocks, though, so in general, I prefer the Luminous Armor for this character, but the Potent Robe is also going to be excellent, of course, if that's the direction that you want to go to increase your damage output. Finally, let's take a quick look at the Hollyphant summon, because this little guy provides so much value to your party that it's very much worth going over its abilities in order to know what we're working with. So firstly, it has 3 level 1 spell slots. This is at max level. It's weaker at earlier levels and scales up to this point, but I just want to go over all of its abilities. And these level 1 spell slots can be spent on Protection from Evil and Good or on Bless. Generally speaking, you're going to want to spend these on Bless. Just blessing 3 of your party members is awesome and is going to give you a lot of value. Means that you can pass on the Whispering Promise potentially, just so you have Bless on everybody, or at least on 3 party members from the Hollyphant. Protection from Evil and Good comes up in some encounters, but is more situational. But if it's good, it's going to be very good. So nice to have as a sort of free spell from the Hollyphant. You also, once per long rest, get to banish, can just cast Banishment. This doesn't cost a spell slot. The Hollyphant just gets this once per long rest. The saving throw on this is not that strong, but Banishment is such a powerful ability that it is going, and it targets Charisma, which a lot of enemies have weak saves in, that it's going to hit a reasonable amount of the time, and a level 4 spell slot from a summon is obviously a very useful thing. You get a heal as well. Once per long rest, you can do basically a half effect level 6 healing spell for 35 healing, which is going to be a really useful additional heal that your party can have. Gives you more sustain and a really big panic button. 35 healing is a lot, so it's enough to undo, like, if you get hit by a big fireball or something and took a bunch of damage, the heal here is going to be very useful. And at will, you can cast Joyous Trumpet. You can actually use it on enemies, not just on will, but you can use it anytime you want. And this is basically color spray. It has a 20-foot radius cone and can potentially blind enemies. Blind is a pretty powerful debuff to spam at will, so this is a nice backup if none of these other spells are relevant, and will just give you a little bit of extra debuffing in combats. Of course, as a warlock, this build already has no save blinds in the form of Hunger of Hadar and Darkness, but Joyous Trumpet is a nice little addition to potentially disable enemies, and Blind is a pretty powerful debuff. Finally, the Hollyphant can fly 50 feet as a bonus action, so you can use these spells and then fly away to safety pretty easily, so you can almost always escape from enemy retaliation. This thing only has 16 hit points, so you do need to be very careful with it. Alright, my friends, I hope that you have enjoyed this look at the Celestial Warlock. In my opinion, one of the most powerful supporting characters in Baldur's Gate, and a really cool addition. It just does something that default characters don't really do, mixing Cleric and Warlock so well. And of course, it is just yet another tabletop class available in Baldur's Gate, which is something I'm always excited about. If you have enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a comment and hit like. Helps me out a ton with the algorithm, so I appreciate you taking the time to do that. And of course, you can subscribe to my channel for more Baldur's Gate 3 build guides and other strategy game analysis. And let me know if you like these modded class guides. This is still somewhat experimental for me, so I'm interested in seeing people's thoughts and also what other mods you'd like to see me cover. Cheers, my friends, and I will catch you next time.